The NFL draft has come and gone, so which rookie quarterback is primed to have the best rookie season? We are past the NFL draft now, so it's time for predictions and speculation, and for the NFL pundits and NFL guest makers like myself to kind of just pontificate, if you will, on just how good the rookie quarterbacks are going to be. This year, I wouldn't be too surprised if we really only saw 3 of these guys starting come week 1. So I really wanted to isolate these 3 instances, these 3 players, and then just kind of rank them, all due respect to the rest of this year's NFL draft class. But guys like Hendon Hooker as well as Will Levis just don't seem like they're in prime positions to be starters from day 1. So we're going to be ranking Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, as well as CJ Stroud, and I just wanted to kind of talk about, look at their situations and decipher who I think may be in the best situation, or at least the most ready to succeed from day 1. First things off, descending order, let's talk about Anthony Richardson, the number 4 overall pick in this year's NFL draft coming out of Florida, who showed a ton of athletic prowess in his time in the SEC, and especially killing it at the Combine. Probably the most athletically gifted quarterback walking into this year's NFL draft, but also the most raw and potential-filled prospect walking into this year's NFL draft. The numbers at college, right? A huge red flag to me was the sub 60% even completion percentage at any point during his collegiate career. So not a terribly accurate passer, but his ability to run and keep defenses guessing and opening up defenses, as well as just his physical prowess, so to speak, right? He's a very imposing physical athlete, standing at like 6'4", 250 pounds. The dude is huge. The dude is super muscled. He runs a sub 4.5 40-yard dash and is really just a major brick house, right? Running behind the pocket. So Anthony Richardson obviously has a lot of the physical tools and a lot of the physical gifts, but when it comes to throwing the football, right? The mechanics of throwing the football, the decision making of throwing the football, that is where he needs a lot of work. Now let's talk about the situation where he ended up in. The Indianapolis Colts and new head coach Shane Steichen, who had a lot of time to cook with the Philadelphia Eagles and put together and help build up Jalen Hurts into last year being an NFL MVP candidate, as well as leading the Philadelphia Eagles offense to a Super Bowl appearance. And now the result, Jalen Hurts being now the 2nd highest paid quarterback currently in the NFL after the Lamar Jackson signing, yada, yada, yada. But that is to say that Shane Steichen has taken these very athletically gifted quarterbacks from the collegiate level and built them into something very prominent, right? I think that's the major projection here, is that he's going to be able to take Anthony Richardson and turn him into the next Josh Allen, but runs like Lamar Jackson, right? Now, it's a major project, though. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, right? I mean, at the NFL level, teams are looking for your weaknesses or looking to expose those weaknesses, and Anthony Richardson just does have some general weaknesses. Now, do I think he's going to be starting day 1? I think he, of these 3 quarterbacks, does have a fair shot, right? Of the rest of the quarterbacks, at least, within this year's NFL draft. I think Anthony Richardson has a fair shot just based on pure athleticism and pure ability and pure hunger and drive and work ethic. I think he really could be a day 1 starter for the Indianapolis Colts, who right now his really only major competition, if I'm not mistaken, is Gardner Minshew, but not a ton of competition with the Indianapolis Colts, and maybe Shane Steichen's approach could very well be to let's throw the kid into the fire and see where do we need to build from there. Jalen Hurts started pretty early within his NFL tenure as well. The season before this past one, there definitely were some signs. There were definitely some times where he looked like he needed work, and they were able to clean him up, and he was able to build upon his potential after his first year as the full-time starter. And look at the heights that he was ascending to with Shane Steichen as the offensive coordinator. So again, I just think the general thinking here is we're going to put Anthony Richardson in a position where he's understandably going to be failing at times. He's understandably not going to be a finished product, but the best experience is experience, right? At least at the NFL level, and maybe that's the thinking that I'm guessing here. So Anyway, number 3 on this list for a reason though, just the biggest project arguably among all the NFL quarterbacks coming into this class. The ceiling is incredibly high. The risk reward is there. Again, the potential is Josh Allen mixed with Lamar Jackson, mixed with Cam Newton, mixed with whoever. But the floor, the potential to bust is also there too. But of all the guys that I think right now, of all the situations he could have ended up in with Shane Steichen, with the Indianapolis Colts, a patient ownership with Jim Irsay, a savvy GM within Greg Ballard, and the offensive weapons of Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, the draft pick they got out of UNC that I really like, Josh Downs, and then an offensive line that does have, in my eyes, arguably one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, Quentin Nelson. There is room to grow, there's room to build here, and also a pretty good defense on the other side of the football. Next up, CJ Stroud for the Houston Texans. Is number 2 here, kind of splitting hairs between the number 1 and number 2 overall picks, but going to the Houston Texans, they do have some nice pieces there. Let's just jump into that really quickly. Around him, an offensive line that is improving, a big addition for the Houston Texans during the free agency period, the addition of Shaq Mason in a trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a very solid, savvy interior guard that they desperately need. Kenyon Green is going to be going into his second season, the first-round pick for the Texans last year, and of course Laramie Tunsil, a very well-established force all on the offensive line. Laramie Tunsil, one of the best NFL offensive linemen. A defense that also is going to add Will Anderson, the number 3 overall pick in this year's NFL draft. His ability from day one, he could arguably be the best defensive player in this year's NFL draft, accounting also for Jalen Carter. Will Anderson helping set the edge. Devin Singletary, last year's first-round pick as well, a huge force for the Houston Texans. So there's a lot of interesting pieces. First-year head coach DeMeco Rines, a former Texan himself, a defensive forward guy, but around CJ Stroud on the offense, you still got Dameon Pierce as well. You've got John Mechie III, who they drafted last year and is going to be fully healthy and ready to go for this season, and the savvy veteran Robert Woods out there, as well as Dalton Schultz, who they picked up this offseason during free agency, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys. So there are some pieces for CJ Stroud to work with from day one here. I'm excited to see what he does. He showed a lot of real pop and real potential in the college football playoff game against Georgia, right? As far as the ability to move around and spread out the defense with his legs, right? Not much of a runner in college, but in that game, you showed the signs, right? His ability to pass, one of the most accurate passers in college football, just last year, 67% completion percentage. The year before that, 71% completion percentage. So CJ Stroud, a very natural thrower of the football. Look, I think he's going to provide a lot for the Houston Texans in a division where, again, Anthony Richardson was also drafted, Will Levis was also drafted, in a division where Trevor Lawrence is entering his 3rd season. I'm not saying the division is necessarily wide open. I do think it is the Jaguars' division to lose going into this upcoming season. The Titans are usually kind of in that mix as well, depending on health. They may be in the midst of a rebuild, who knows, but the Houston Texans could very well intrigue and surprise some people this year. I'm not calling them a playoff team by any means, but I think you can absolutely expect there to be some real improvements this year, heading in the right direction. DeMeco Ryans loves to play aggressive. I expect nothing less from that defense this year as well. So I think CJ Stroud's in a pretty solid situation in Houston. And the number 1 overall draft pick from Alabama, Bryce Young, going to the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers with established head coach Frank Reich, coming over from Indianapolis, bringing his guys over. I think Frank Reich maybe has a real chance here to build something with Bryce Young. Bryce Young, in my opinion, was the most NFL-ready quarterback walking into this NFL draft. And size, issues aside, Bryce Young is an absolutely talented football player, a pro-ready football player coming out of Alabama, played at the highest level in college football at Alabama, is their first at least Saban-era player going number 1 overall for a reason. Bryce Young is a very talented football player who can make all the throws, incredibly smart, incredibly savvy, but going number 1 overall does have its caveats, right? Number 1 overall teams aren't necessarily picking in that position because they're great, right? The Panthers before the trade with the Bears were sitting at number 9. Even a top 10 pick team not necessarily great, but there are a lot of interesting, talented players on this team, right? Free agency pull-ins. You had Adam Thielen coming in from Minnesota, an established veteran wide receiver. DJ Chark coming in from a year with the Detroit Lions, and then Miles Sanders, the running back from the Philadelphia Eagles. The offensive line, Hakeem Ikwonu, their first-round pick from last year, setting the offensive tackle spot, right? A couple of offensive lineman additions within the interior, and Bradley Bozeman, as well as, trying to remember his name here, Austin Corbett, formerly of the Los Angeles Rams, Taylor Moton on the right side of the offensive line, an established veteran there. So there are some pieces. The paramount, obvious answer going into the season is going to be keeping Bryce Young healthy, keeping his jersey clean, but there are some decent pieces along the offense, right? Some places to build on. The defense, though, known to be very aggressive. Brian Burns, Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin. They've got some very good, very young, very explosive players on the defense as well. I think Frank Reich is walking into a very interesting position. Obviously, NFL coaching experience, showed a lot of promise with the Indianapolis Colts, but things just kind of withered off towards the end there. Has a lot of experience with a lot of veteran quarterbacks, and I think that's only going to help him. Has been around the game for obviously a very long time, a former player as well. Again, I just think this is a very good situation for Bryce Young to be walking into. You've got a very stable man at the top who's ready to develop you, ready to help walk you into the NFL level, and you, being Bryce Young anyway, already a very solid product going into the NFL. So that's just kind of how I rank these three quarterbacks going into their rookie seasons of the NFL. We're post-draft. Honestly, it's a lot of speculation at this point. I'm excited to see the careers of a lot of these young rookie quarterbacks within this year's NFL draft class, right? A couple of guys I also like that probably aren't going to start this year, but have some intrigue at the very least. I really liked Hendon Hooker. A lot of intrigue, obviously, with Will Levis in round 2. Was a very early pick, almost a day 1 pick, but obviously, you know, it's some storylines there, right? There's a number of other quarterbacks within this year's NFL draft class. Who knows who's going to be the next Brock Purdy of this draft class, right? Who's going to surprise a lot of people in year 1. There's always somebody, it feels like. But I'm very excited to see just how things are going to evolve going into this NFL season. Kind of a rough prediction, if you will, of just what the situation is, maybe a ranker, if you will. Kind of just to throw together a video after taking a couple weeks off to do NFL draft coverage last week. But thank you so much for watching the content. Of course, feel free to stick around and watch some more. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and of course get the bell on to know every single time I'm dropping a video. My name's Tristan Rines. I'll catch you in the next one. Adios.